Jack irons. Kosiv Agri world. So then she fucking coughed up a hairball. Jack was firmly squeezing his face as Hans finished his story. For a moment he tried to make his driver's head explode with the power of his mind, but the big idiot just kept grinning. I've been with you for 12 years, Hans. 12 years! He stretched out, and somehow you keep managing to find new ways to disgust me. He slowly shook his head. What can I say? It's a gift. Hans replied with a laugh as he dug into the can of food he had to try and get the last bits out of the bottom. A gift? It's a fucking curse! That has been inflicted upon me! The curse of Hans. What the fuck did I do to deserve this? Jack looked up at his hatch and slowly shook his head, raising his arms as if to plead with a higher being over his misfortune. If I had a dollar bill for all the things I've done, I'd be standing on a mountain of money. Hans replied then, and Jack frowned at that, thinking it over for a moment. Why did that sound familiar? Isn't that from a song? Cindy chimed up from behind Jack, and he could see Hans pause as he looked guilty for a moment. No. No, I don't think it is. He looked awfully guilty. Jack glanced back at Cindy, who shrugged, and then he looked back up at Hans. That is from a song, isn't it? His driver tried to play it off by shaking his head and playing stupid, well stupider than normal. No. Not that I know of. Nope. He shook his head and really seemed far more guilty. Now Jack was really curious. If ever there was a time we needed the internet to look up song lyrics, Jack muttered while Hans coughed and then tried to change the subject. But yeah, they're really crazy. I mean, I like a girl who scratches my back, but these two really just shredded me. Jack snorted then and rolled his eyes. They've got claws, you fucking idiot. Of course they're going to cut you open. Or maybe not full-on claws, but more than our nails, obviously. Jack sighed and shook his head as he thought about it. I really need to learn how to warn the Desvians about you. Probably gave them crabs or something. Not great for cross-species relations. You wound me, sir! I mean, seriously, though, I keep the shampoo around just in case, but I haven't had crabs for a while. I might give them fleas, but I'm sure they've got something to deal with that. Jack narrowed his eyes as he looked at his driver. Did Hans really have fleas? Could he? Was that a thing for humans? Why is it I have to sit here and consider how filthy my driver is in consideration to keeping up the hygiene of my crew? Which is a whole new concern since we found out your dirty ass didn't know where the fucking hygiene compartment was. Had you not brushed your teeth in years? Decades? Jack asked as Hans snorted and finished up with his can of food, which he tucked into the small trash pouch near his seat. Come on, man, gotta give me some credit. I'd brush my teeth on the ship. Plus, I've got that minty gum stuff, so it was only a few days max. Don't forget how incredibly attractive I am to the ladies. Gotta keep my teeth white and clean. Mostly. And I use those little floss picks. Or, I did. Do we know if the locals use tooth floss? He asked then, and Jack nodded. Yeah, they've got something close. It seems less strong? It breaks way easier, and it only comes in unscented, but yes, they've got it. I'd use your picks sparingly so you don't have to just use their floss until we're totally out. Jack couldn't help but shake his head a little. Here they were on a mostly hostile xenoplanet, and they were talking about flossing and brushing. Even at times like this, hygiene was important. He glanced up through his rangefinder again and then sat up. Okay, wake up, everyone. We're getting the go-ahead. Hans quickly fired up the fans while Jack pulled his helmet and headset on, snapping his harness into place as they prepared for a fight. If things went well, it wouldn't be much of a fight, but he always tried to plan for things going horribly wrong. Either he'd be right and be prepared, or he'd be wrong and yet pleasantly surprised. It'll be nice to get a working radio again if possible, Cindy mentioned from behind as they got moving. They'd been resting in the woods near a Desvian outpost that they were hoping would have what they needed to get a message to the pirate satellite. But if not, it still had the parts they'd need to get a working radio hooked up to the tank again. So far, Leola, the Desvian mechanic who had been helping them, had only been able to cut loose Cindy's hatch so that she could use it again. She didn't have the parts to make new antennas for the tank's radio system, but they were about to fix that. Leola was fairly handy, and obviously picked up mechanical knowledge really easily, but it would still be beyond her to try and rebuild any of their more complicated communication equipment. Try to explain a tight beam burst transmitter to someone who had never seen a computer before. The situation in the Desvian kingdom was far more confusing than he'd first figured. The kids they'd saved weren't in a prison convoy, they had been conscripted. Apparently conscription for Desvians is something like a death sentence because they're pulled into a several-decade-long tour of service. So if they manage to somehow survive countless fights, wars, and their own officers, they won't see their family till they're in their 60s or 70s, depending on when they were conscripted. There was obviously quite a bit of tension between the lower classes and the nobility. At least on this planet, their arrival sparked a rebellion, and from what he understood, it wouldn't be the first time the lower classes had revolted. One of the rebels had just hoisted up a red flag to signal it was time to attack. The plan was for them to seize the armory and open the gates before anyone was the wiser. But Jack was prepared for things to go wrong. "All right, you know the plan, Cindy. You're on the remote MG. Hans, move us in quick to the gate, but be alert for a trap." They moved out across the field between the woods and the outpost that was set into the foothills of a nearby mountain range. So far no one shot at them, and he didn't hear anything in the distance. They were approaching what looked like a mix between a castle and a more modern military outpost. The center was a squarish stone structure with rounded towers, but there were concrete bunkers and gun emplacements flanking it and protecting the road heading to the gate. There was some sort of elevated landing pad at the back next to the tower that held the dish and antenna structure they were looking for. He felt the tension build as they drove closer, staring at the gun emplacements that remained stationary. So far, so good. Just as they were getting close to the gate, which was open as planned, there was a muffled explosion, and he saw fire from inside. "Fuck!" He loaded, eyes open. Jack said, unsure what waited them inside. Soon enough, Hans had the tank roar in through the gate as Jack tried to take in their surroundings. First thing he noticed was the group of dead Desvians spread out around a tunnel entrance to their immediate left. It was hard to tell, but he thought he saw red armbands on some of them. There was a cluster of Desvians behind cover ahead, and to the right of them, but they just looked like infantry, with handheld weapons only. That's when he saw some sort of emplacement at the back left of the outpost on the elevated landing platform back behind the command building in the center of the outpost. However, he also noticed a large red metal tank of some kind between the gun and the comm tower to the left. Was that fuel? He wasn't sure if Desvians thought the same, but when he saw something painted bright red like that, he normally took it to be a warning. Before he could even assess the threat, the Desvians manning it were yelling and pointing as the gun turned at them and fired. "Hans!" "See it!" his driver called out, trying to jerk the Cossack to the right and away from the glob of destructive energy. As it hit the ground next to them, it kicked up dirt, and the chassis shook as he saw warning indicators on their left turbofans. "Cindy!" Jack called out, not wanting to fire on them and risk hitting the fuel tank. "Can't!" "The gun won't elevate high enough," she called out from behind him, and he cursed. He tried to aim the gun as far right as he could, but with the way Hans had tried to position them to avoid the attack, it wasn't as far as he liked. "Firing!" he shouted and stomped on the pedal. The blast took out the gun and sent pieces of the crew flying in all directions. But as he watched, he saw a jet of flame appear out of the side of the red fuel tank. "No!" he gasped out just before that ruptured and exploded as well. "No!" he repeated as he saw the blast take out a chunk of the stone base of the comm tower. Then the crew collectively held their breath as they watched. The metal comm tower didn't react at first, and then he saw one of the support legs start to buckle before the main dish twisted towards the now weakened side, and then the whole structure fell free, crashing to the ground below. "Fuck! Jesus, Lucifer, and goddammit!" he cried out. "The rest of the antennas are okay. Maybe those will be enough." Cindy tried to remain positive behind him as he saw the infantry behind cover to their right, toss their weapons down and raise their hands. "Fucking fantastic!" Jack growled out as he checked the other external cameras to see if the rebels were okay. Just as he was doing that, he saw one with an armband run out of the tunnel near the bodies and point out the gate as he shouted something. "Damn it! Where's Four Eyes? We need someone who knows some English." "I think he's saying something about a scout," Cindy mentioned from behind him. "Hans, turn us around!" But his driver was already bringing the tank around to aim back out the gate. Already on it, Hans said as Jack watched the front viewfinder. There, out on the road approaching them, was something that looked like an extra-fat motorcycle with those strange, spherical wheels they used on Desvian vehicles. It was just sitting there as the rider in a black and silver uniform looked at them. But it was only a moment before the Desvian got back on the vehicle and spun it around before taking off back down the road. "After him!" Jack shouted. "He loading!" The Cossack quickly began to give chase as they suddenly were dealing with the first truly fast Desvian vehicle he'd found. It was tearing off down the road even as they gave chase, quickly starting to pull away from them as it accelerated much faster than the Cossack. "Shit!" Jack hissed out as he aimed. "Target 3,200 meters. He waited for the green. "Firing!" He stomped on the pedal as he saw the light flash and the shot at the Scout. The explosion hit the road near his target but didn't get it. It still made the Desvians swerve off to the side and lose speed as they tried to regain control of the vehicle. "LT, I don't think we'll be able to catch that thing if it hits full speed," Hans warned. "How much you want to bet that guy has a higher top speed than us?" "Not faster than 6,000 meters a second," Jack replied. "He loading!" He wasn't having a good day, and he wasn't letting this Scout escape him. He tried to get his breathing under control as he watched the target start to slowly pull away from them as it got back up to full speed. "Cindy! Hit the moonshine!" "Got it!" There was a whine from behind him as she hit their own little non-standard issue turbo. It injected gaseous alcohol fumes into the fan engines to give them a little extra juice. It wasn't great on the parts, but it could bump them up to 150 kph. They wouldn't catch the Scout still, but it would make them drop behind a little less. "Target 3,600 meters. Firing!" Jack stomped on the pedal and this time hit just ahead of the Scout. Even as he blew a decent chunk out of the road, the Scout veered to the side and banked up and off the berm the road ran along that had the train tracks up top. "Fuck! You know, I liked it better when they were all incompetent," Jack hissed as this Desvian proved exceptionally hard to kill. As they continued to give chase, Jack heard a horn in the distance over the hum of the reactor and fans. What did it sound like? "Is that a train horn?" Cindy said, making him realize that was exactly what he thought it sounded like. As he looked ahead, he could see a train approaching them. "Ooh, fuck no." "He loading?" "Load, you bitch!" Jack growled and resisted the urge to keep stomping on the pedal until it was finally good to fire. His eyes kept flicking between the light and the screen as they chased the Scout, but before it flashed green, he saw the vehicle turn and race up the berm, jumping the track. It was a damn close thing, but the Scout cleared the track and the front of the train by easily less than a meter, putting it on the other side and safe from his fire. "Fuck!" He screamed in frustration as Hans eased off the throttle and they began to slow down before stopping as they faced the train that blocked their chase. "Cutting the moonshine feed," Cindy quietly mentioned from behind him, but Jack was leaning back in his chair, resisting the urge to kick something out of frustration. He watched the train pass before his eyes then. "Sorry, LT. With our left fans damaged, there was no way I could do that same trick," Hans mentioned, and Jack sighed heavily before nodding. "Yeah, I know." He looked back at the screen to look at the train, and then frowned as he realized it didn't look like any of the freight or grain trains he'd seen before. Is it just me? Or do those look like turrets?" Hans muttered as Jack's eyes went wide. "Reverse!" he screamed, and Hans quickly began to back up as several green blobs were fired from the turrets on top of the train that was passing before them. "He firing!" Jack couldn't keep from screaming as Hans very narrowly managed to avoid the oncoming fire. With a train so close before them, Jack didn't even really need to aim, but as the shell exploded perhaps 200 meters from them, he saw the shimmer of a shield around the train. "It's a fucking war train! Hans, get us the fuck out of here!" "Working on that? We'll outrun it!" Hans was starting to angle them back the way they'd been going while chasing the Scout, but Cindy spoke up. "Wait! We can't go that way! It's heading towards the outpost! We have to kill it!" Hans growled and banked hard. Jack was glad for his restraints as Hans put the Cossack through a very tight 180 to then start chasing after the tank instead. "Jack!" "Kill it fast!" Hans urged, as he began to strafe left and right to avoid the lobbed shots of green energy being fired at them. "Already on it," Jack replied as he watched for the telltale green light once more. Target 600 meters! Firing!" He stomped on the pedal and saw another fireball engulf one of the rear train cars, but the shimmering shield hadn't failed just yet. "Fuck! Shield's still up. Keep on it, Hans." "That pig can't outrun us. I'm more worried about all those fucking guns," his driver replied as he had the task of keeping them angled in a way that Jack could hit the train, while simultaneously avoiding all the incoming fire. Jack was forcing himself to breathe slowly, even though he really just wanted to scream and curse and hyperventilate. But he kept it under control. 12 years of combat hadn't left him with well-developed social skills, but he certainly wasn't going to freak out under fire. When the green light flashed, he stomped on the pedal. Target 500 meters! When the fireball erupted ahead of them, he saw the shimmer fade and then cease altogether. That was it. "Shield is down! Next one should penetrate." "Well, fucking hurry up!" Hans stressed as he kept dodging the incoming fire as best he could. The fact that they weren't dead and Jack didn't see any warnings besides the fans on the left was a testament to his driver's skill. He tried to figure out where to put the first AP round when he realized something. It was a train. Loading. Hans hit the gas and then swing way out to the right. "Our left fans aren't doing so good, remember?" he reminded Jack. "Yes, I know. Just swing us out as far as you can without overloading them. I just need a better shot further up the train." Hans didn't reply, but as he gunned it and drove them just under one of the lobbed energy shots, Jack figured he was going to try. He kept his hand on his stick, waiting for his opportunity, and then Hans veered off the road before kicking their tail to give Jack a shot further up the train. He didn't have much time to aim, but the train was a thankfully large target. "Target 900 meters! Firing!" He stomped on the pedal and the explosion hit the first car just behind the engine. It didn't penetrate the armored plating, but that didn't matter because he saw it rock the whole car, so only the left half of the wheels were even on the track. He held his breath for a moment, and then saw the rest of the cars start to lean before they slammed back down on the tracks. He was about to curse as he thought his plan failed when he saw the wheels go flying off, splintered and broken from the stress of being slammed back onto the tracks under all that weight. As he watched, the train sagged to the right, and then the whole thing tumbled to the right, pulling the train off the tracks as it derailed and rolled down the berm, smashing into the road and breaking up before their eyes. "Fuck me. I don't think I have a silhouette for a train," Hans muttered, as they watched secondary explosions rupture the armored beast now stretched out across the road.